Welcome to the Strategy Mob Podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Laurie, you mentioned earlier, about the mindset. For this to fundamentally shift and continue to stay this way, and Kerri, you saw with the people that already have the mindset, that this is how I'm going to do. I'm going to put the customer at the center of my buying process or selling process. I'm going to put the customer at the center of my marketing efforts. But it comes down to that mindset. So Laurie, how our backs up the wall. We made the change. We fought the couple rounds. We came out okay, but now we're going into round 2, 3, and 4. How do we change that mindset and continue to push forward?
This correlates to the work that I'm doing very often with both dealers and vendors, because what we've got to do first of all is give everybody an opportunity, like Kerri said, to catch up, but not just catch up, to understand the project at hand. Even if it's something as massive as like the way we conduct business, but like get everybody in the room and throw the ideas out and give everybody a voice in the conversation. Then whatever it is, direction we choose to go, it's awareness for everyone. And awareness doesn't mean I heard there was a meeting. Awareness means I was in the meeting. Then we go for alignment. Alignment, nothing's going to happen if you don't have alignment at that point. Then you start to set some targets, some early stage baking in reality. And then what becomes very important then is all of your communications internally and externally. Like, we're doing these things now internally, and here are the expectations that we have of everyone, and to the customers even. We're doing something, things differently now, and here we are. Because then the next thing, and this is a little deeper end of the pool, but then we've really got to take a look at what are the roles that we have at the store, right? And that's a whole category all into its own. Role reclarification. We need to look at pay structures, right? Because when all of the KPIs have changed, we've got to look at what are we paying and for what and when, and what is the new normal in the midst of this new normal. And then we want to look at also the very next thing. We want to take a minute and just say, okay, how well of a job are we going to do creating and developing these people towards this? Like, what's our commitment? And so, even new things like talking about things now, like what's the proper percent of contracts that should be even sent or reviewed prior to the customer arriving? What's the proper number of customers that our people can be interacting with? And not just number of customers they're interacting with, but what should that interaction look like? I got a call on that the other day. I'm like, and we could go on about that later, but what does that look like? And what are we saying? What about all those scripts everybody paid so much money to get? They're done. What about that whole mentality of, if we're still managing to saying Jason, but they're not here, they're not serious until they're here, we've got to rewire the managers' mindsets, and we've got to also pay those managers accordingly. And then what about the number of times managers got involved with customers wherever they were, virtually, which are real customers, or in the showroom, which are real customers? So we need to see a cadence of different reporting metrics happening. So I think until we start to really rethink our whole ecosystem, these other things, I used to work for a guy that just said there's splotches of things on the wall. They're not a cohesive strategy. So planning, awareness, and then commitment, and then go forward and know that you're going to make some mistakes, but know that you're going to regroup, get back to alignment, and make adjustments and keep going and evolving.
No, you know what? I feel like in the past, we've been able to kind of blindly take shots in the dark and eventually hit something. And that was enough to kind of just continue to keep the ball moving. But that's not really necessarily the case anymore. Both Kerri and Laurie, you guys have seen the dealerships that have really, didn't skip a beat and just was able to kind of just ride through this storm, were the ones that for a very long time prior to this had put the customer at the center of everything. It's the why they develop their staff. Laurie, to your point, it's the why they hire who they're hiring. It's their point. And Laurie, I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on the marketing side. Look, in the past, when it comes to marketing, huge discounts. low lease rates. I mean, that's literally been our message for like, I don't know, last 50, 60 years, it's like, but how do we put the customer and how do we evolve our marketing efforts to put the customer at the center of that? Kerri, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I'm shaking my head because you were talking about some of the players that were ahead of this, and they were doing some of these things and some of these processes before they had to, right? And I think there were a couple things. One, they had the long game in mind, and a lot of times when you look at automotive retail, we do things all for short-term gain. But what can I do today that is going to result in a sale tomorrow? Or maybe next week, but no further than that, right? And so we do things even from a profitability standpoint that are very short-term in nature. I always like when people make fun of some of these companies out there that aren't profitable yet, but are doing some revolutionary things. I'm not going to name them because I don't want any hate mail sent to me. But let's just remember that Amazon didn't make profit for their first 9 years of business, okay? And they're laughing right now at all of us who were making fun of them when they weren't making profit. A lot of times when you change a business model, when you're the first to do something, it actually isn't profitable on day one. It takes some time to refine, particularly when you're creating a trend. And I think what's challenging in our business, and even when COVID struck, is that we tend to be more competitor focused than we are consumer focused. We tend to want to know what other dealers are doing. And I think we are at a fork in the road right now where we really need to be looking at what non-automotive is doing, right? Because they've been in this virtual world much longer than most in automotive retail. When it comes to leadership, we need to be looking at what non-automotive is doing. And I say that as someone who loves our business, but we're behind the curve here on the virtual remote retailing, all of that front relative to other industries. And I think that's going to be key. And the other thing is just from an efficiency standpoint. I think that what I have seen, I think is the blessing of COVID in automotive retail, is all of a sudden being efficient is become more important, right, than the number of leads you're getting and all of that. Your marketing efficiency, which I think you're going to jump to next, making sure I'm spending money on marketing that actually yields, results. And then people, your efficiency when it comes to people. I've always asked this question, and just shoot me, everyone, but how come there's so many people that get paid on one deal? Think about that. How many people in a dealership get paid off of one sale? Think about that. Now, all of a sudden with COVID and furloughs and layoffs and things like that, everybody had to get more out of individuals. People had to take on more jobs. We all of a sudden started to look at every individual and say, how do we get the most out of this person's time? Because we are forced to. And I think that's something we should have always been focused on, is efficiency of people, marketing, and process.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy Mob podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to sign up to Be a Mobster at strategymob.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.